What happens if someone refuses to pay court damages? What happens if someone refuses to pay court damages? Civil courts are empowered to award damages to compensate victims for harm caused by another party's wrongful act, breach of contract, or negligence. However, a court judgment is only effective if it can be enforced. When a defendant refuses to or fails to pay damages, a range of legal remedies are available to compel compliance. In this video, I talk you through the consequences of non-payment, enforcement mechanism, and sanctions across multiple jurisdictions, including the UK, US, Canada, Australia, South Africa, India, Germany, Russia, and Nigeria. It also examines the policy rationale behind enforcement and the legal tools used to ensure judgments are meaningful. 1. The legal principle of court damages. Damages serve two primary purposes. 1. Compensatory, that is, to restore the claimant to the position they would have been in had the wrong not occurred. 2. Punitive, in some jurisdictions, that is, to punish egregious conduct and deter similar behavior. When the court orders a defendant to pay damages, the judgment creates a legal obligation. Non-payment is effectively a breach of court order, which exposes the defendant to further legal consequences. Consequences of refusing to pay damages. 1. Contempt of court. Refusal to comply with the court judgment may result in the defendant being held in contempt of court, which can include fines, seizure of assets, imprisonment, example, United Kingdom. In Henderson versus Henderson 2016, EWCA Civ 800, a defendant who failed to pay damages as orders was threatened with contempt proceedings, including seizure of assets, to satisfy the judgment. Example, US. Courts in the US can issue writs of attachment or impose contempt sanctions for refusal to pay court damages. Enforcement orders. Courts have mechanisms to enforce judgments, which includes writs of execution. This allows seizure and sale of the debtor's property to satisfy the judgment. Garnishment orders. This directs third parties, for example banks, to pay the owed amount directly from wages or accounts. Charging orders or liens. This attaches the judgment to the debtor's property or real estate. Example, Canada. Under provincial legislation, a judgment creditor can obtain a writ of seizure and sale, seizing assets such as vehicles, bank accounts, or real estate. Bankruptcy or insolvency proceedings. If a debtor refuses to pay or lacks the means to pay, creditors may initiate bankruptcy proceedings. The debtor's assets are liquidated to satisfy the judgment. Insolvency consequences include loss of control over assets and restrictions on future business or credit activity. Example, Australia, under the Corporation Act 2001, individuals or companies failing to pay a judgment debt may face winding up or bankruptcy proceedings. International enforcement for cross-border judgments. Countries may rely on reciprocity treaties or the Hague Convention on the recognition and enforcement of foreign judgments. Enforcement is subject to local law, but mechanisms such as asset seizure, garnishment, or registration of foreign judgment are common. For example, a U.S. court judgment may be enforced in the U.K. by registering it under the Administration of Justice Act 2020, thereby allowing U.K. enforcement mechanisms to apply. Comparative jurisdictions. 1. United Kingdom. Courts can seize property, garnish wages, or hold debtors in contempt. Criminal sanctions are rarely applied unless refusal amounts to willful disobedience of court order. Enforcement agencies include High Court enforcement officers. 2. United States. Wide enforcement powers exist, including bank account levies, wage garnishment, property liens, and contempt imprisonment. Punitive damages are enforceable, and non-payment may trigger additional civil liability. Canada. Provincial courts issue writs of seizure and sale, garnishment orders, and may initiate commencement of bankruptcy proceedings. Enforcement is generally civil in nature rather than criminal, but contempt proceedings equally exist. Australia. Courts issue writs for levy, garnishment, as well as seizure of property. Refusal to comply can lead to contempt orders, and bankruptcy proceedings are common for judgment debtors unable to pay their debts. South Africa. Civil enforcement includes warrant of execution for movable property, attachment of immovable property, and garnishment of wages. Debtors who willfully refuse to comply may face civil imprisonment. India. Civil courts may order attachment and sale of property. Criminal contempt may be pursued if the court believes the refusal is deliberate. Enforcement is guided by the Code of Civil Procedure 1908. Germany. Judgment enforcement is executed through bailiff seizure of assets, bank account garnishment, or property liens. Refusal to pay is treated as a civil matter. Imprisonment is only rarely applied in cases of willful non-compliance. Russia. Enforcement is conducted via Federal Bailiff Service. Debtors' accounts, salaries, and property may be seized. Criminal liability exists for deliberate evasion of court orders in serious cases. Nigeria. Courts may enforce judgments through writs of execution, garnishment orders, and property attachment. Willful refusal can lead to committal for contempt of court, potentially resulting in imprisonment. Factors affecting enforcement. Solvency of the debtor. Enforcement options vary depending on available assets. Internationality. Courts distinguish between the inability to pay and willful refusal. Nature of the damages. Compensatory versus punitive damages may be enforced differently. Cross-border issues. International assets complicate enforcement and often require treaty recognition. Practical examples. UK, a debtor who refuses to pay a personal injury settlement may have wages garnished and bank accounts frozen. US, in a contract dispute, a corporation refusing to pay damages may face asset seizure and contempt fines. India, refusal to comply with property dispute damages can trigger attachment of immovable property. South Africa, wage garnishment may be ordered for employment income. These examples illustrate that non-payment has serious legal consequences, varying by jurisdiction, but universally enforceable through civil remedies. Policy considerations. Rule of law. Enforcing court judgments preserves public confidence in the legal system. Deterrence. Sanctions for non-payment discourage deliberate avoidance of obligations. Fairness. Courts balance creditor rights with the debtor's human rights and due process. Economic efficiency. Prompt enforcement prevents systemic abuse and ensures compensation is meaningful. Comparative analysis and lessons across jurisdictions. Certain themes emerge. Civil enforcement is primary. Most systems favor seizure, garnishment, and liens over imprisonment. Contempt powers exist but are reserved. Only deliberate refusal triggers criminal sanctions. Cross-border enforcement is complex. International recognition of judgments require treaties or reciprocal arrangements. Human rights considerations. Modern courts carefully weigh enforcement against proportionality and fairness. In conclusion, when a defendant refuses to pay court-ordered damages, legal systems across the world provide multiple remedies. Civil enforcement through asset seizure, garnishment, or property liens, content of court proceedings, and in some jurisdictions, initiation of bankruptcy or criminal proceedings. While the exact enforcement mechanism vary, the underlying principle is universal. Court judgments must be effective, and non-payment cannot be left unchecked. Failure to pay damages undermines the rule of law, jeopardizes victims' rights, and can result in severe consequences for the defaulter. Ultimately, whether in the UK, US, Canada, Australia, South Africa, India, Germany, Russia, or Nigeria, refusal to pay court damages triggers a series of escalating legal remedies designed to ensure compliance, fairness, and the integrity of judicial processes. Unless I can assist you further, those are my submissions. Thank you.